G'day guys, welcome back. Episode 45, Money in the Tank. We're here from the office location for myself, Joel Seach, Principal Advisor, Harpel FG, and who have we got there with the background? Is it a virtual Zoom background there, Brad? Or
my office location there, Joel, Fiji. So over here in the Pacific Island of Fiji, it's not actually totally real. There we go.
not one of those fake ones. Well, not one of those fake ones, fake. But loving that, mate. No. That's terrific.
Thought we'd put a nice background in. Brad Devone, so startup and generalist.
So those listening on the podcast, if you can't see, Brad's got a picturesque Fijian background with a couple of palms and a pier and some flowing ocean, and then myself, I've got a virtual fake background here. So not as nice a location as Brad today, but great to have you guys with us. So it's awesome to catch back up again. We missed you last week, Brad. I think you're out of action, and Arndog is out of action today. He's copped a flu, and he just managed to get in the pod last time, which was brilliant because he got struck down that very night, I think. So
by the COVID again.
So hope you're resting up.
I think in the last 3 weeks, we've done every possibility of what we can be. 3 weeks ago it was me and Arnie. Last week it was you and Arnie, and this week it's me and you.
There you go. So you get everyone gets a bit of a mixed bag of all sorts of us for the last few weeks. So rest up, Arns, and hope you're feeling well and get better soon. So without further ado, we're going to get stuck into some great topics today. So we're going to touch on a few things, and I guess to give you guys an overview, the RBA had their meeting on Tuesday, and we sort of had an increase in rates. So we'll touch on that. We'll touch on, I guess, the economy and where we see that going, and how kind of the economy is reacting so far with those rates, fixed terms, bit of market movement as well. So we'll touch on that as well. And then Brad's got an interesting topic to talk about today and share some slides on, which will be kind of the Russia sanctions from Yale University, I believe it is, Brad.
Yeah, so just a report that came out from Yale. It's about 3 or 4 weeks old now, but I've combined it with a bit of more recent data as well. It's come out in the last 4 weeks. So just to paint a bit of a picture of, I guess, the Russian economy at the moment. And since it's so important to the EU economy and the rest of it, it's just one of those kind of things that would kind of keep the tankers up to date with.
Absolutely. So without further ado, we're looking forward to sharing those things with you guys today, but we'll get stuck into Ripkins. So we have got the Bible here, the Finance Bible, bestseller, 1999.
No Googling here.
No Googling here. So this one is dropping on page 29, the rules on investment. So there are too many valuable investment tools, but few capable tradesmen to use them. That's the first one on here. And then be aware that stockbrokers only make money if their clients buy and sell. For many brokers, that is more important than their clients making profits. That's an interesting one, that bottom one there.
Big Matthew McConaughey, Wolf of Wall Street, round and round we go. Kind of comes into fashion there, right?
Beating the chest.
But basically, you get them in and you 10 times them. What do? You return that 10 times? No. You're the next best thing. And the next, look, I think that sort of stuff goes back to the 90s, right? In my opinion.
Yeah, and I don't know,
the crazy years, the 80s and 90s were crazy years, right? And then all that kind of stuff.
I think in general, you just need to ask yourself, how is this professional being paid to service my situation? So, you've got a stockbroker or a mortgage broker or an advisor or a real estate agent. You ask yourself how they're getting paid, and how does that then, I guess, compensate them? And then how does that then, I guess, provide impartiality or not in certain cases with why or how they're getting paid? And would that then, I guess, potentially have a conflicting interest in the advice that you're getting? So if you've got a broker, are they acting in your best interest, and how do they remove conflict if there is conflict? So is that by charging just a dollar fee per month, or is it, are they creating a lot of trades for the sake of creating trades and not much outcome? Excuse the cat there. So essentially that's what you've got to ask yourself, and that's in any dealings, I think, when it comes to dealing with professionals and money.
I agree with you. I mean, that's why Australia moved to fee for service. I think you were as well, but I was around in the banking days, the finance days of free fee for service, and kind of, had 4.29% roll-ins to super and then 4.29% roll-ins to pension, and you had some people kind of just roll in, even though they're going straight to pension. And, I think you just ask yourself how they're getting paid. I mean, I'm over here at the moment actually looking at it as a property, and it's the same thing. You've got to ask yourself, how's this broker getting paid? What's his angle? What's this person's angle? What's this person's angle? Everyone wants to get paid. And kind of what am I getting from it and how are they getting paid? And then kind of, upfront is good, more kind of, when I say upfront, I mean clarity.
So you've got to understand that nothing is free, and a person's going to get paid for a service they're providing or a product they're providing. But I guess the important thing when it comes to finances is to check the small font and the writing, and if you are paying someone a fee, then it's more transparent and upfront and you're getting good advice, then that's brilliant. But potentially people will sell the proposition on, oh, you don't have to pay me, it comes through the product, or it gets, I get paid through a third party. Well, how then is that third party then influencing the deal, and is their best interest at heart for the person? And quite often there's not.
No.
Quite often you're better off seeing what the cost is up front and seeing where the charges are coming from and being transparent with that, because that person's a higher chance, I believe, of giving you advocacy and working in your best interest and no one else's. So
I compare it to back in the day when we all thought, like, how great it is using, different platforms and stuff for free suddenly, right? You used to have to pay for things in the kind of, software world, or when we used to use the internet, everything at a price. And then suddenly things started becoming free, like, Facebook was free, this is free. And then we kind of worked out why it was free, right? And then suddenly, when people started finding out why it was free, they're like, oh, I don't necessarily like that. So it's the kind of same thing, which is when things are, oh, don't worry about it, it's covered by the product or the service provider. Have a look into it. Definitely do it.
There you go. Well, that's probably the deepest we've ever dug into a Ripken, I reckon. But I think it's definitely
deep. I think it's again, Joel. I think we did philosophical stuff last
philosophical Ripken. But I think there's definitely some stuff there to be mindful of. So for the tankers out there, just keep that in mind whenever you're dealing with someone in the professional sphere, on the money sphere, that and probably property spruikers and those sorts of things are probably the worst at it, because you see it time and time again as an advisor that clients are seeing this so-called property expert, and they're getting paid from the developer, they're getting paid from the mortgage broker, they're getting paid for the rental manager. They'll woo you in with, here's a gift card for this, and thanks for coming on board, we'll handle everything for you. And the reason they're handling everything for you is because they can control the whole process. They're not doing it in your best interest. They're sort of relying on that person to be kind of maybe a bit ignorant and and new, and they prey on that sort of stuff. So quite often that is a really scary one that we see regularly in the advice space, where people are going in a bit unawares, and they've seen this person that was saying they're handling everything and acting in their best interest, and quite often it's the opposite. So be mindful.
I mean over here, like, really quickly, I put an initial kind of just call it a general, not offer, but some general terms forward, and the broker in between is the agent, who's also been kind of also organizes a bunch of stuff to do with infrastructure on the property. It was like, oh no, he's not interested in that. He wouldn't be interested in that. Went on to say, he's not in any position where he needs to, get forced to do this stuff and all the rest of it. And I said, oh, right, makes it really easy. Just thank you, and if it ever becomes an opportunity, let me know. And in 12 hours, I get a message back. Oh, you might be interested, and might be. It's like, yeah, because you wanted to sell a parcel of land that was 3 times more than what I wanted. So you're caring about your fee and your infrastructure and the rest of it. You're not caring about. So they're not working in your best interest, I can assure you.
Ask yourself the question. That's it. Ask yourself the question: how and why, and why is this person doing this? It's not going to be out of their best interest of their heart necessarily, but if they're providing professional service, then great. If they're in it to try to get hidden commissions and wins, then just ask yourself, how is this person getting paid, and are they removing all conflict or making an attempt to remove conflict? So anyway, good one. So let's touch on interest rates. So the Reserve Bank of Australia, so the RBA had their first meeting on the first Tuesday of every month in Australia, and they caught up, and in their wisdom, they've gone down the track of increasing rates again by another 50 basis points, so 0.5% So essentially the rate now in Australia, the Reserve Bank lending rate is at 235 basis points, so 2.35%. So they've had five consecutive rate hikes now. And I think the
Five.
first one was the smaller one. And then everything from there has been, everything from there has been 50. So that sort of then, I guess, feeds through to hoping will start to feed through to the economy because banks will start lifting their rates. And I guess some of the interesting stuff that I've read this week from some of the things that have come across our desk from a fund manager standpoint and an interest rate standpoint is, I guess the article I read here is on the high street. It isn't immediately easy to see the impact of higher cash rates. The cafes in Melbourne and Flinders Lane eateries are also bustling and appear back to their non-reservation taking best. But it seems the RBA's recent decisions have created some aquaplaning, which was the word I was chatting to you about earlier. So aquaplaning, where it's more referred to.
I thought it was just to do with cards, right?
It is. And if you look up Wikipedia, it actually is. So it's the aquaplaning or hydroplaning by the tires of a road vehicle or aircraft or other wheeled vehicle occurs when a layer of water builds between the wheels of the vehicle and the road surface, leading to a loss of traction that prevents the vehicle from responding to control inputs. So in relation to, I guess, a economic term where the brakes have been applied, but the economic tires haven't yet got traction. So the economy is on the skids, but the rubber is expected to hit the road. The economy is slowly on the skids, but the rubber is expected not to hit the road till sometime early 23 as rates reset higher for most Australian fixed rate mortgages, which is a different thing all again. So the RBA are pulling their lever they can pull, and it's not having as slower impact as they would have hoped because the economy is still ticking along and consumer spending is still there. So they haven't quite got the desired traction that they're hoping for yet, and that's why they're kind of smashing out these 50 basis point rises. And I guess that fixed rate mortgage side of thing that I mentioned just briefly there are a large number of Australians on fixed rate mortgages, so they're still sitting at interest rates from 2021 as an example, or 2020 if they locked in at lower rates. So they've still got free cash flow. So they're not sort of living in the economy now that a lot of the variable holders may be holding. How does that sound to you, Brad?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds. I think there's a couple of things according. One's that, and then the other one I saw. I think it was on Bloomberg. They had a nice graph showing our savings ratio versus the retail sales. And so, even though retail sales obviously continue to grow, I think it was like 2 point. Also spending up 2.2%. The amount of savings has come down. Let's have a look at Q1 2020. The percentage of a salary that was being saved back then was 25%. Right? So pre-pandemic levels were circa 5%. Spiked up Q1, Q3 because a lot of fear generally drives people saving because they don't know what the future holds.
Mm-hmm.
It was still 20% around Q3 2021. And what we've seen over kind of, I guess, the first couple of quarters of this year is it's down to about 8%. So you start seeing savings.
That's in the American market?
No, Australia.
ABS.
Yeah, from the ABS, mate.
Let
me just quickly, throw this. Give me 1 second. Just so we're on the same page, and just for the tankers, low note. Can you see that properly?
Yeah, it's coming up now. Yeah.
Yeah. So, part of my massive mobile reception here. It's not exactly dealing with the best internet in the world, but what you're seeing here is Australians ran down savings, which still remain, I guess, above pre-pandemic levels. But as you see, Q2's down to 8.7%.
That was what I was going to mention just then quickly, Brad. The CBA CEO, Matt Comyn, came out the other day and mentioned in his address that 78% of home loan borrowers are ahead with their payments and a third of customers are 2 years ahead. So that's sort of interesting that over that period of time.
And that's probably similar to that, right? Which is like your 2021, 2021. I'm guessing if you had a home loan, because I think only 30% of Australians have home loans. So if you had a home loan, you're probably putting it either in the offset account or paying off quicker, right? And if you didn't, you're probably putting it in your bank account. And this is probably more bank account, whereas yours, CBA, also gives that other picture, which is people in offset accounts and stuff are well ahead.
Or in redraw, or know, they can see a lot of those loans in terms of money, what the repayment levels are, and how much they're ahead in terms of money sitting in redraw and offset. So, you know, they can see the data.
Banks have got good data. They've got
good data.
Holistic pictures of a customer. Way better than ABS. Let's just say that.
Yeah, but they're there for you, Brad. The banks, they're there for the customers. They're there to serve. You know, they're just look after you guys and be there to help achieve your goals.
I did get told that when I worked in NAB for 10 years. I don't know if I saw it, but anyway, they might one day be a sponsor. So let's just,
you know, CBA,
they're there for you.
They're there for you.
CBA, CBA reached out to Chris Arnold if you're interested.
Absolutely. And how do they? I forgot to mention the listeners. If you've got any good topics you want us to discuss or questions, you got to hit us up on the socials. We haven't got Arnie here to throw to today, but hit us up on YouTube or that's probably the easiest way to get us on Facebook and Money in the Tank as well. So questions you guys have or topics you'd like to chat about or 50-50s, anything like that's brilliant. So
as you can see, we are willing to talk about any topic. Right?
Absolutely.
We jump around the world.
We've got a wide variety of different topics, I guess, we can chat about. The other thing that I was going to mention today is just from the morning bell it came across is, I guess the stocks are having a bit of a rough patch the last week I must say the first 8 months of this year, 9 months of this year, but stocks rallied just overnight.
I don't know about your portfolio, Charlie.
They've had
a nice 9 months.
No, they've had a very rough 9 months, but so the stocks rallied as the Fed Vice Chair, I don't know how to pronounce this, Lael Brainard, reaffirmed that the central bank would do what it takes to stifle inflation, whilst also noting that the risks of going too far. So many traders have decided to ignore her first words and focus on the latter point of this speech, which is why the markets had a good day. Markets have been hoping that the Fed would start to hand out smaller increases starting in September, but at one point in the day, they were pricing in an 86% chance of a 75 basis point hike. We're getting 50s here. They've had some 75s. I think they've had some 75s, haven't they? Well, they just had 50s there, Brad.
Yeah, they had, no. They didn't go 100. No, they had a 75.
75, yeah.
And they went that middle of the ground 75.
So then the Federal Reserve on Wednesday gave a summary on current economic conditions known as the Beige Book. So the report showed the economic activity was little changed in many regions across the US and the growth outlooks remain weak. So interesting things to keep an eye on there. And, you know, the American markets are sort of trading in quite volatile waters at the moment. And it's been that way for the whole year, which has started kind of with the Russia-Ukraine thing and then headed on to this inflation thing and rates increasing. So, so I think it's just a point of topic to continue to expand on and chat about as we move through this period.
Yeah, I think I read a thing the other day which is saying things like, you know, kind of went through, you know, it was like meme stocks gone, crypto gone, NASDAQ gone. Like it just started, like each bubble is kind of slowly, you know, being deflated one by one, and some harsher than others. And it's just one of those things that no one knows where. Honestly, no one knows where anything's going. And I guess, you know, just following the rate rises, seeing what happens. And I think when the US pulls up, I think that's what's going to happen. I know that every country says that we obviously look at our own, because it is important for us to look at our own statistics and data and what's going on in our own economy, because our economy is completely different to the American economy.
Of course.
But I think, you know, we obviously take a lot of guidance as well from the biggest kind of central bank in the world, being in the US, the Fed. And it'll be interesting to see kind of what they end up doing over the next couple of months. So I think, you know, they're starting to see inflation because they publish, obviously, inflation results monthly as well. We only publish it quarterly, if I'm correct, Joel.
Yeah, well, that was the thing that they laughed about at Governor Lowe that summer. Right. I think it was in Europe. Right. They do it quarterly, and everyone laughed at him. So I think Australia's going to try to pull its finger out there and get us to monthly.
Yeah, and I just think that, like, you know, because America, we're not going to see inflation figures till October, right? October for the September.
And an environment that we're in at the moment, it's pretty important to be seeing these regularly and have these live data, because otherwise you're flying by the seat of your pants, you're flying blind a little bit.
And that's why I think because we do it on a monthly basis, I think we're going to be until Australia moves to that. I think we are going to be looking at what are the monthly inflation numbers coming out of, like, you know, partner economies or like the US, and making decisions for ourselves. And so that's just something to watch. I think, like you said, something to monitor, something to watch. Are we out of the dark? Is this the bottom? We don't know. Just kind of something to keep watching and seeing the impacts, and kind of what America does, I think, is going to largely drive what probably happens over here.
So yeah, so
For better or worse.
we'll keep an eye on it, and we'll keep you guys posted and keep you updated, keep the tankers updated, and anything you want to touch on, just yell out. When it comes to inflation, Fed Reserve, RBA rates, what does it mean? Yeah, happy to discuss those topics. But right now we'll get on to Brad sharing screen, if you can, Brad, in terms of touching on the Russia tariffs from the report that you've got from Yale University. So
yeah.
if anyone's watching today or listening via YouTube, then you might be able to hopefully see Brad's screen once he brings his PDF up. But essentially, the Yale report's covering off, I think, on some of the consequences, that have occurred, and the sanctions on crippling the Russian economy. So I guess, Brad, if you wanted to give us a summary on this one, and we can, chat about any quick questions we may have. I can see there it's a nice 48-page PowerPoint. So you touch on the pages you feel are most important for the listeners to read about.
Not all 48, John.
Not all 48 pages.
I thought we're moving to 2-hour podcast. No. Look, I've done the work for you, tankers. I've read through all 48 pages, plus supplementary, plus another 3 hours of videos, actually, and we're summarizing it into a quick, condensed, hopefully only about 10 minutes, 15 minutes max, but I'll try and keep it to about 10. Just touching on the major things, because I think there's a lot of talk, correct me if I'm wrong, Joel, it's at least within the circles that I read in and get information from, about mixed messages about, the importance of Russia to the economy, what the importance to Europe is, are the sanctions working? Actually, no, the sanctions aren't working because the ruble's strongest it's ever been. Sanctions do nothing except for hurt people. They don't put pressure. And so, I don't know, are you hearing, what are you hearing, Joel, around kind of the mixed messaging around sanctions and stuff, mate?
Look, I probably, one of the main things that I've read or seen is that there's still, because of the way we've globalized over the past, number of decades, there's sort of this underlying need for global trade, and Russia have got these, these resources, and we've spoken about it before, like gas being one of them, where countries are still needing it because they can't operate without it, and so I guess that's one of the things is, have those relationships severed, and are they, still being purchased from Russia? And there's some of the things I guess you could touch on today, and how are the tariffs working in the I guess the sanctions, and will it inevitably come to a halt where Russia sort of says it's too much for us, but it seems like they're still being able to, tick along.
Yeah, I mean, that's what this thing gave me a lot more information and context. So I'll run through it, and it's information, people. The first thing, kind of, I always like to do is
general in nature,
co-authors, general in nature, everybody. But basically,
education purposes only.
Education purposes only. And look, the number one thing that I didn't realize was that the IMF is not a policing kind of organization, in that it obtains information from countries and statistics, and it just relies on them. It doesn't say, is it right, is it wrong, are they keeping stuff from us, are they fudging statistics? So that's one very interesting thing that I found out. They do have, obviously, the ability to look into some information on the rest of it, but on the most part, they just believe the information being given to them is what it is. And so what Yale have done is they've come out and said that basically the IMF is naive and lazy in their assessment of economies, the Russian one especially. And I guess they put an assessment together, which I'll run through, and obviously a bunch of people on the screen right now that are probably a lot smarter than us on this subject, Joel.
IMF for the listeners, Brad, International
Monetary Fund. And it does a lot of stuff, from tracking the world economies to basically providing, in unison with other organization, loans to developing nations, tracking kind of recession problems. It grabs a set of data from every country, and basically is like, the kind of like economist for the world, I would say.
So it's not,
at least my read on it.
So it's not the Mission Impossible, Ethan Hunt, Impossible Mission
No,
Force. No, it's different to them.
no, no cruisy jumping on planes.
Okay, different to them.
Unfortunately not.
Gotcha.
Unfortunately,
Gotcha.
unfortunately not. But we've got a lot of intelligent people on the screen at the moment. For those on the just on the listening, a whole bunch of directors of research, presidents of stuff, fellow researchers of other things, economists and stuff, energy specialists. Let's just say a whole bunch of people that spend a lot of time in in the data that we're about to go through. So the team used experts, private Russian language, direct data sources, including high-frequency consumer data, cross-channel checks, releases from Russia's international trade partners, data mining of complex shipping data, and it's the first comprehensive economic analysis measuring current Russian. So basically, instead of just taking the data that Russia says, they go out to all the other kind of channels and distributors and shipping and all the rest of it and build it bottom up to get a bit of a different picture of probably what's being put out.
Try to get a more impartial point of view.
More impartial, exactly right. So first things first, this was interesting. Optimistic forecasts have it wrong with cherry-picked statistics. So the Kremlin has withdrawn from all IMF since the start of the war, all foreign trade data, all export data, all import data, all oil and gas monthly output data, all capital inflows and outflows, all central bank monetary-based data, all foreign direct investments, all airline and airport passenger volumes, all lending and loan organization data. So basically, their economy is heavily, oil and gas dependent. They are providing that information out to people about kind of where it's being sent to and the rest of it anymore. Foreign trade, all their export data, the amount of companies that are left, the brain drain, everything. All that's kind of no longer being provided to the IMF, which I found, and it's factual. You can go to the IMF and this information's there. I found that very interesting because why would you withhold all this information unless it's probably painting a story that you don't necessarily want to be out there? The other one is around, I guess, within Rosstat, which is, picture that as the Australian Bureau of Statistics kind of thing. Putin's personally transferred people into positions, sacked multiple heads that kept sending some data. And so he's playing with kind of the internal departments within a country that are supposed to be neutral, I guess, in nature. But who's neutral anywhere in the world? I'm not saying any country is perfect. I'm just kind of putting the facts out there in terms of kind of what's happened and changing to new methodologies to calculate statistics and the rest of it. So jumping into slide this one, which is interesting. Russian commodity exports far more important to Russia than the rest of the world. So we've covered this before, but gas, supply worldwide, gas oil 10%, meteorological coal 10%, and then nickel 6%, silver 4%, aluminium 4%, rye and oats 4%, and copper and other things. So nothing in Russia actually supplies. So at the start we thought like neon gas and all the rest of it. At this present moment in time, nothing above 10%, which I found again interesting. Obviously, there's countries that are more susceptible than 10% to things, but globally, I think it's interesting to kind of see the picture of Russia and commodities. When we start talking about natural gas, which has probably been the biggest thing since so much of Europe is dependent on Russian natural gas. A few things that have come up that I wanted to touch on. I guess the first thing first is last week the European Union, actually it's not in here, but the European Union released a report showing that they are at 79% capacity of all their storage levels now. When the war kicked off, they were at about 41%. So they've doubled their storage capacity as in terms of the amount of gas they're holding for the European winter in preparation for Russia doing what they've recently done over the last few days, which is cutting off Nord Stream 1 and the energy supply into Europe. So ahead of the winter, the European Union got together and actually said, oh, well, how are we going to get through winter? And they've taken over a bunch of Gazprom, which is Russian-owned storage in Germany, and they're at 80% before things kicked off. But I guess what we're looking at the moment is today, I guess, when we're looking at LNG, so Europe, the third graph there, Jolly, very interesting that over half now of basically European gas has been taken over. So in February 2021, basically zero gas came from the US. Very interesting.
Yep.
And now now it's crossed over, and so now 5.5 billion cubic meters are coming via ships from the US, LNG, liquefied natural gas, and only 4.5 from Russia.
Bit more expensive transportation, I'd imagine.
Way more expensive. So the costs associated with LNG, for those that don't know, gas obviously can be transferred in the pipelines just in gas form, and then sent on into, say, from Germany into households via pipelines or plumbing. Whereas liquid, to transport gas overseas, for instance, it requires very, very expensive. We've got them over in WA. Very expensive, probably $10-20 billion LNG facilities, which turn it into a liquid. You need very, very specialized boats, which there's only 680 of in the world.
Oh, 680. Good stat there, Brad.
682, Joel, to be precise.
Hey.
That one there. And so that.
So in summary, not a cheap exercise to get these.
Correct, and then and then Europe needs to be able to turn it back from a liquid to a gas before it pumps it on. So not a cheap liquid, but it's showing that now the European Union is getting over half of their natural gas from the US, and will be getting more from other places. And so Russia's actually dependent on Europe for its gas, since it sends 83% of its gas today to Europe. And other people will say, "Oh, what about China? What about India?" We'll get to that one. So Russian gas exports have plummeted to lows. So 991, Europe used to take 90%, 2003, 75%, 2020, 35%. So Russian flows to Europe, and there's a lot of kind of pipes on the screen for everybody. I'm not going to go into that, but they're all the different pipelines that Russia sends gas through. And so, at the moment, gas is continuing to go down, and soon it's going to be probably 0%. They're trying within the next 2 to 3 years, if not sooner. I guess the next one, which was interesting for those people like me, that probably thought, can they just send it on to China? China needs gas, loves fuel, loves energy. But on the screen for those on the podcast, but what I'm showing to those on YouTube, basically where the fields were that send the gas to Europe and have the pipelines, there's no pipelines running from those fields in the Arctic to China today. And basically, to run those fields, you're talking about thousands of kilometers of pipeline, estimated to be between $50 and $100 billion to set it up. China has not put forward any sort of proposition to Russia to fund that. And the interesting bit that I found out the other day was Russia used to use Shell, and all these companies used to team up on pipelines because of the expertise of Western countries. And since they pulled out, they don't even have the expertise at the moment to run their own pipeline, because all the pipeline that Russia built themselves was pre-Soviet era. So there's a lot of kind of infrastructure that needs to get built, cost, expertise, etc., and time, estimated 5-10 years to run pipelines in China. So in short, Joel, it's not easy for Russia just to simply say, okay, stop selling to Europe gas, let's just start selling it to China. They've only got one LNG facility at the moment
to turn it into liquid to transfer.
Yep, to transfer, and they're doing that to China at the moment. But again, last week there was a airline report came out on Russia, where they're starting to now cannibalize the Boeing and the Airbus planes that they have left, to try to make them last. Russia won in 2025, but it looks like by 2023 they will have no serviceable planes that will be able to take passengers from Boeing or Airbus, which make up 84% of their domestic flying, into these Arctic areas, and you can't get into the Arctic area any other way at the moment.
There you go.
In terms of like the staff and rest of it. So that was interesting.
I guess it's one of the things that sort of I take from that is the short term. I guess the ramifications that they try to put in, such as sanctions, economic sanctions from other countries. You can brace, I think, for short-term consequences and sort of buckle down and try to get through. But it's probably the medium to long-term, play to say, okay, well, they're able to get through this short-term, but how does it look from a medium to long-term? And that's where you have have to make big potential strategic adjustments or pivots, e.g., changing your whole gas line setup, even if it's doable. Because you can see the writing on the wall with that usage, where, I'd heard that there was still usage happening in Europe, but it does look like it's starting to really slow down now.
But they've completely cut it off as of
Yeah.
3-4 days ago. Russia's completely cut off Nord Stream. And it looks like they'll do it for winter. And so
Because
whether it comes back on and goes off,
Germans were big users of it, weren't they?
60%.
And are they cut off
60% of
completely
all
now?
German, they are cut off completely right this second.
Yeah.
Completely.
Yeah.
And it's just interesting because there's a lot of people talking about the Indian market and Chinese market. This one was interesting, which is Russian gas sent to Europe, 170 billion cubic meters. Russia sent to China, 16. And so that's where the ship number came in, Jolie. That's 682. Because basically these guys did the analysis saying that if Russia wanted to send, even if they wanted to, if Russia wanted to send the gas to China, that they would need an additional more ships than we have on the ocean, due to the amount of time it takes to send a ship to China, which is about circa 34 days, and then 34 days to return. So it's a 70-day round trip, and so you need a lot of anchors all leaving, right? And coming back.
That's if you can get anything into the port of Shanghai if they're not locked down. And I don't know if anyone's ordered anything from overseas at the moment. It's coming by ship. It's not a quick process at the moment to get something freighted. So
still waiting on my furniture, John.
Still waiting on the furniture.
And then really quickly, the oil. So that's gas. Oil. Couple of things, which is China and India are buying more oil at the moment. It's because Russia's giving it to them at an average discount of $35 off the barrel, which at 110, dollars a barrel goes down to 75, which is still profitable, and that's why I think Gazprom just announced $150 billion net profit over the first 100 days this year. But we'll start seeing this lowered because of, I don't know if you heard about it, Jolie, but the G7 got together, and you think, oh, what's the G7 going to be able to do in the world markets? I thought that until I actually looked into it, and they put a price cap on oil for Russia, and so they're not telling India and that you're not allowed to buy oil, because how are you going to force India and other countries not to buy Russian oil, right? They don't. But they are saying that if you buy it, if you're going to buy it, Russia has to sell it to you for this much, and it can't sell it to you for over. And I was like, how are they going to
enforce it?
How are they going to enforce that? And just really, really quickly, I thought I'd just jump over and share this one, which I found absolutely fascinating. I didn't even know this existed, and it's so I find it so wrong. But basically, there's an international list here. Is a list of 13 insurance groups worldwide that do cover 90% of all trade in the world.
They're ship insurers, are they?
It's shipping insurance. And so basically this thing here, which is it's a nice little video. I'll actually link it this week, and it's a 3-minute video that I watched which explains how international shipping works. I'm not going to play it for the tankers, don't worry. But IGP&I, basically it started back in 1899. So this is not something you create overnight, everybody. These 13 block members, of them, they're all owned by the G7, and I think outside of that, one country. So 8 of them are UK, 2 of them are Norway, 1 of them's USA, 1 of them's Sweden, 1 of them's Japan.
So very impartial.
Oh my God, it sounds so bad. So no China, no India, like all the trading partners of the world, right?
Yeah.
So what happens is these 13, each of the 13 is kind of responsible for a block of the world. They individually insure ships themselves. Then if something happens, they go up to the 13. So the 13 share that risk. And then if something happens above what the 13 can pay for, they've got 80 of the world's reinsurers with 20 of the biggest 25 reinsurers worldwide, and then the reinsurance. And the reason why they can get an insurance policy that is, I guess the insurance policy that they can get, since they cover 90% of ship insurance today, is a pretty good deal with the world's reinsurers, Joel. And so anybody trying to get insurance outside or reinsurance outside of this group, you'll be paying an estimated 4 to 5x of what they pay, which will make shipping basically so non-competitive. It's not funny. So they have an absolute monopoly, for better or worse, over the global shipping. And what they're using is this as a trigger, saying that no ship will be insured if the cargo contains Russian oil, and the oil price paid by the customer receiving it, the bill of lading, is above a certain amount.
Sneaky way going about it. So there you go. And for the listeners out there, if you weren't sure of the reinsurer thing, so when you see a pretty brand name insurance company out there, they do sometimes spread risk across multiple insurers, but then they've also got the big hitters behind them, which aren't necessarily a household name, and they're called the reinsurers, and they'll cover potential big risk or jumbo risk, jumbo insurance. So where they're protecting a bigger claim potential compensation payout that may, if claimed upon, would potentially bury that insurer. So yeah, reinsurers cover that.
Correct. Thank you, Joel, and for explaining that stuff. So I can't sometimes jump through through the hoops, as you know. The last little bit that I thought, because I don't have got time, but last little bit that I thought was interesting. Skip forward past. I mean, they're running inflation at the moment between 30 and 40%. This one is the interesting bit, which is Yale are actually estimating there's a risk of a 40% reduction in GDP in Russia over the course of the next 3 years.
That's that medium
kind of Soviet.
That's that medium term
medium
thing
term.
we're talking about again.
Yep. And so at the moment, some really quick stats, which are very, very interesting to me, which are 1,000 global companies have jumped out of Russia. Some of them have been replaced, like the McDonald's reopened, same staff, same burgers, different stock. I mean, they ran out of beef burgers and stuff like that, so not exactly the same beef suppliers and the rest of it, but they've got Russia's kind of version of McDonald's. But the interesting one was there's been
McDowell's.
Yeah, I don't have no idea what it's called.
No, I'm paying homage to what was it called? Coming to America. McDowell's. Do you remember the movie Eddie Murphy, McDowell's, where they've got?
Yeah, I remember Eddie Murphy. I'm trying to remember I can't remember McDowell's.
Instead of the giant arcs, they've got the big V's or something. It's McDowell's. So that's Russia's version of McDonald's.
Sorry for not backing you up there, Jolie.
That's okay, mate. Arnie would have got me. Arnie would have got me.
I did a Super Troopers joke the other day, and I fell flat with this German guy over here, and I was like, oh, okay.
I would have got you on the Super Troopers, mate.
Thanks, brother. But 500,000 Russians have fled. Right, Russia. 50% are classified as highly educated or worked in skilled sectors such as tech. So that's your brain drain.
And you know what countries need skilled workers at the moment? Everywhere.
Exactly.
And Australia.
Go and get exactly right. 15,000 of the 500. That's this. 15,000 of the 500 are classified as ultra high net worth individuals, which means they're worth over 30 million US.
There you go.
Yeah. So look, there's a I guess there's a big. That's 20. Sorry, and just to let you know that 15,000. That's 20% of all Russia's ultra high net worths have left already. So if you take 20% of all your ultra high net worth people that are generally, let's say, your capital inputters to businesses, or they run businesses, you take away 500,000 worth of your skilled labor, which in Russia is estimated to be at approximately 4 million. So you're already taking a large chunk of that away. Interesting. They had a couple of other slides, all this stuff. I just skip through that. Conclusions. Basically, Putin's delusions of self-sufficiency and import substitution has come to a complete standstill, and no capacity to replace lost business in the medium term, products and talent. And so they think that 3 decades worth of foreign investment and growth is going to be completely eradicated. Now, whether it works or not,
we'll see.
Who knows? I did like knowing that things like the European Union have been preparing themselves. Because I think when I think of Russia, I think of how's it going to hurt the global economy? I think of Europe. How's Europe going to hurt us and the rest of it? It seems that there's a lot of preparation going on, a lot of work going on in the background. And that LNG stat for the US blew me away. That kind of you could, within a 6-month period of time, place half your gas with LNG shipments just like that. I thought that was pretty crazy.
Well, time will tell, and the update, the Russia-Ukraine crisis going on doesn't seem to be dissipating anytime soon, but is their hand going to be forced when they start to see the writing on the wall? And will that be too late? Will they have lost those people forever and not get them back and be set a long way back economically? So, but yeah, obviously, the war and conflict is a terrible thing. So we want it to sort of end just for that point of view.
Jolly.
Yeah. So
and no one knows. I mean, I always reply to everybody that like everyone's like, oh no, Russia's gone forever and this. And I'm like, just remember where we were with Vietnam 40 years ago, where we were with Japan.
Yeah. Yeah.
Things have as soon as people come back to the drawing board and start less wars and more talking. But where we'll go, Jolly, who knows?
We'll see. But no, that's great. So I guess a couple of quick fire items for you guys, and thanks for the rundown there, Brad. Anything else you guys want to hear about from the Russia side of things? Just yell out. Hit us up on YouTube. So in terms of probably a couple of quick fire news items. So with the markets at the moment, just with the latest kind of information that we got recently with the thing that came across my desk this morning. So the US stocks climbed for most they have in about a month's time. So I think we had the 10-year Treasury yield dipped, the 2-year yield and 30 yields are also down for the day. But in terms of the stocks before, I was just looking up, we had so the All Ordinary, so the Australian share market and the benchmark was down as well, and its lowest close since July 19th. So potentially it was a bit of a bear rally there where it picked up and then has come off again. So it's had its 5th losing day in 6 sessions. So today might be an update because it's coming off the back of that. The other thing that I mentioned briefly last week in the podcast as well was just in terms of the property side of things domestically in Australia, an interesting, change of tact from the Queensland government was to do with land tax. So for listeners out there, land tax is payable on land that you own, and it's a state-based tax. It's a state-based tax, general in nature, and it's excluding your principal place of residence, but you start to pay land tax when you accumulate land above states' certain thresholds, and every state has a certain threshold that applies to that state. So if you're a property investor, as an example, a way of diversifying is you're able to buy a property in different states and potentially not hit that threshold depending on the land value or component value of that land, and therefore alleviate that land tax burden. And it's been a state-based tax, so you don't get stung if you own one in Queensland and one in Tasmania, as an example, because they're separate states. But what Queensland have done is they've decided to go around a different route of that and say, well, if you own a property in Victoria and you buy an investment property in Queensland, we're going to calculate the property land that you own in Victoria and add that to the land tax here in Queensland, therefore changing the rules on how the state-based land tax works, and essentially starting to tax people for owning a property in another state, which is just ingenious government, because they're already in Queensland struggling, like most states, struggling with a rental crisis, because people need shelter, they need somewhere to live. Not everyone's going to own a property, and some people never want to own a property, they just want to rent. So they're already struggling with that. And they've had these, limitations put in for many, many years now to disincentivize property investors, which is, again, generally your mums and dads buying a property just to get ahead and try to help create wealth, which makes them less of a social security burden in the future too. And also supply shelter at the same time, which the government, can only do a certain point of. So if you're disincentivizing people to invest in your state, I read an article this morning, their caravan parks and places are almost full already from full-term tenants that can't get a rental accommodation anywhere. So rental prices are already pushed through the roof, and you make a policy like this where you feel like it's going to incentivize property investors to do it. And then they're starting to put things forward like, rental caps, or forcing people on short-term accommodation like holiday homes rented out. So they're trying to put these measures in that are going to actually end up working against them in the medium to long term. And I don't know if they realise they're doing it, and they've created this rod for their own back. So anyway, if you're listening,
I'm not usually gobsmacked and have no words, Charlie, but I have no words.
Yep. So if you're listening to Queensland government, maybe have a think about what you're doing. But anyway, so that's just a little tidbit there for quick fire items. We don't have Arne here today to give us his run off of Elon Musk, situations, but I did read that I think Twitter were taking him to court, and he's potentially, so the shares of Twitter jumped 6% Wednesday. So a shout out for Elon, for Arnie, for if you're playing the drinking game at home. The shares of shares of Twitter jumped 6% on Wednesday after Delaware court denied Elon Musk's request to delay the trial over his attempt to back out of buying the company for US $44 billion. The trial is expected to begin on October 17. Musk will be able to add claims from a Twitter whistleblower to his case. However, the judge ruled. So there you go. So that's your Elon dose for the week, Arnie.
There you go, Arnie. Elon dose.
If you're listening. But so yeah, thanks for listening today, Tankers. Before we fire away, we've got a couple of quick ones. So we've got a good 50-50 from Brad today. So Brad's going to run the 50-50 for us. And today, being Thursday, the 8th of September, is Are You OK Day. So that's a big shout out to Are You OK Day for any listeners out there. Are you okay? And followed up with, are you really okay? So have a conversation with your mate or someone you haven't spoken to for a while, or your friend, and check in on them. It's a really great day, this one. And yeah, I think it really encourages that mental health thing and making sure people are talking and having a chat.
I'm glad you seconded up with that. Are you really okay? Sometimes it takes people twice to be prompted to actually open up, right?
Because the automatic thing is to say, yeah, I'm good. But, follow up with,
are you okay? And it's different response, right? I don't know what that's saying to the human brain.
It does, indeed.
Nice one, Jolly. Nice one. 50-50. When you're on holidays, you have the choice of snorkeling or scuba diving, put that in one category, or going for a hike. What would you pick?
Is there a hike destination, or is it just a hike?
Let's call it a nice hike along a mountainous ridge near the water, overlooking the bay. At sunset. There you go, Joel.
Okay. I'll probably go with not that I've scuba before, but the snorkeling. I'll go with that. I like the water. I like a bit of a scuba. You never know what you're going to see in there. Yeah, hiking's good fun. I prefer to walk with the dogs. I'm not going to have the dogs on holidays. So put me down for snorkeling and potentially an ability, if able to learn, scuba diving at the same time.
You could crush scuba diving, Joel. You could crush it. Yeah, look, I'll pick scuba or snorkeling, well, mate. Bit of a water baby. Did knocked out about. I'm so burnt. It's not funny. Just not kind of knocked out about 3 hours of snorkeling yesterday on a nice reef. So yeah, no. So
love it.
We need hiking in Patagonia. If I had to pick two, I'd definitely get the water. It's much easier.
Yes. No, brilliant. Love it. Thanks for the 50-50, mates. And you enjoy your time away there. Thanks to listeners listening in. Again, hit us up on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, wherever you may find the Tankers. And any questions you have, any 50-50s, feel free to throw them out. But I think, I think snorkeling and scuba diving is the winner today. So thanks for listening in. Appreciate it.
Thanks all.
And we'll chat to you soon. Cheers, guys.
See you all. Bye.